Gabe, you've done such a good job of, I think, cultivating relationships with current investors and even future potential investors. Tell us a little bit about how you've done that and what you've learned from that.
Yeah. Well, I think as a founder, just recognizing that you need to be out in the face of your organization, building relationships with people well ahead of a raise. When you think you need money, then it's the wrong time to build relationships with people. So I've tried to have discipline around building relationships year or two out ahead of when I would ever need to raise money, so I can get to know them and they can get to know me. So in particular with our B round, we ran the process ourselves and had probably 30 great conversations spun up. Like 11 of them were sort of really valid, leaning in, and then we're able to whittle that down to a list of like 5 to get term sheets from. But that's because we've done a lot of work historically to sort of build those relationships over time. So as a founder, you just have to like tell yourself, look, part of my job here is I need to be thinking about how the business doesn't run out of money, which means building relationships with capital over time. And not just thinking about capital, but thinking about who those people are, like who I want, like, do I know them well enough to know that when they're on my board, this is going to be fun? Because it's going to be like a 5-year marriage here. So it has to be a good relationship. I will say that our lead investor of our Series B, Fulcrum, they're out of Atlanta, have been a fantastic partner, just an amazing investor, super entrepreneur friendly. They're really operational. So most of the people on that team have sat in my seat before, and so they have a lot of empathy for me as a founder. But I feel like we've sort of won the lottery with our current lead investor and our board in general.
Yeah, Fulcrum, they are great lead investors. What about raising capital in the future? You have plans to do that in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get in this to sort of have a lifestyle business, right? Or to create, a business of a certain size and then turn it into a cash cow. And so I kind of believe there's room for a public profile kind of company in our space, which will likely mean we'll need to find a new capital partner for the next big stage of scale. Honestly, in the current environment, like we're way more focused on just being cash flow positive, cash flow break even, and making sure that we don't raise before we need to raise. I think one of the worst mistakes you can make is you raise too much too early and you don't have a way to deploy that capital in an effective manner. I always tell people that I meet with on the investment side, like, I want your LPs high-fiving one another 3 years from now. And if I can't create a clear path to that, like, I don't want to take your money right now. And so we're sort of building conviction over the next year or two, call it, to be able to decide when that point is when we're going to find the next partner.
Well, and because you and the team have been so disciplined at efficient growth, you really control your destiny. You don't need outside capital to stay alive here, right? You're just massively efficient and still growing incredibly well. So that's what earns you the right to be able to control when and who you take money from. So
that's right.
Congrats to you on the team for that.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about a rock star on the Virtuous team, either current or former, that came from an unlikely place?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of my executive
you got a couple of those, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only person on my exec team right now that really would look like the traditional SaaS person is Chris Horn, who actually used to work for Greg, because he worked at Campus Logic. So at least there's like some pattern recognition.
Venture-backed company, enterprise software, yeah.
Kind of a big deal. Yeah. The David, our CRO, he was, I don't know, maybe my 5th hire on the team. He was selling software for like Financial Force and SAP, and just he met with me 5 times and trying to convince me to hire him. And I'm like, I don't know if dude, you're going to have to take like a massive pay cut here. Like, why would you do this? And by about the 5th meeting, like, he's creating all these documents and telling me how he's going to like fix all my problems. I'm like, you understand, like, this is way harder. You're going to have to take a massive pay cut. He's like, I don't care. I want to be part of something meaningful. Right. And I hired him as a sales rep, and he's grown all the way through the organization, and he's my CRO. And for my money, he's one of the best CROs in the Valley. Just amazing at his job.
Completely agree. I think a lot of times we don't know the leadership ceiling that people might have. Like, you brought David in as individual contributor. You haven't hit a ceiling yet on leadership. He's got room to run, and he's got a big team now. I mean, he's scaled a big team. that has like incredibly efficient unit economics. That's been fun to see. Whenever you hire an individual contributor that in the early days that can evolve into an amazing leader, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably underappreciated in that, yes, if you scale too fast, you're going to have to hire over some people.
Right.
Which is it's a huge bummer because you're going to outscale people's ceiling. Even if they're going to have that ceiling in the future, you just may be growing faster than that. But I think a lot of founders may underappreciate you have some really, really smart people on your team that are fast learners. And so if you can stay out ahead of that and just make sure that your really smart people are learning quickly enough, that you probably have higher ceilings in your team than you even know to be able to take that next step.
Do you have any tips or tricks? How do you help your people understand, hey, I see incredible potential in you.
Yeah.
I need you to keep learning and growing.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? How do you help people see, hey, I want you to become this in the future here?
Yeah.
How do you help people understand you've got big plans for them? They need to keep up with your plans for them.
Yes. I mean, just saying those words out loud a lot. I think one of the things I've heard you say and I use on my team is, like, even with my executive team, like, I believe that you guys are the team to get us to this milestone. And just saying that out loud in front of the whole executive team. So they know not only, like, is their job secure, but I believe their ceiling is higher than they even think they believe. And so recasting that vision. The other thing that I've tried to do, and this is actually can be hard in Phoenix as well, but it's doable, is pairing our leadership team with folks that have done it before, right? So pairing our head of CS with people that have done CS really well at just a stage or two bigger. Because not only do they get to learn, but they kind of they get to see what the next stage looks like and almost realize, like, this is just a normal person. Like, I could be that person. And so it kind of helps them see forward a little bit.
I love that. I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, to go back to a comment you made about you thought your customers might want you to be an API and just connect into a bunch of best of breed products, and then you realize they wanted one throat to choke, single vendor here. The other positive side of that is your TAM got way bigger, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's always a challenge in vertical markets is how do you grow your TAM through multiple products, right? You guys have done that as well as any company I've seen. What's the product portfolio look like today? And I know you're a product-oriented CEO. So what's the product portfolio look like today, and how do you think about what to build next?
Yeah. It's a great question. How do I think about what to build next? Probably even the more interesting one. From a product perspective, it's, CRM, email, marketing automation, online giving, volunteer management, and some data tooling, and reporting.
It's a big suite.
It's a big suite. So if you think about most nonprofits have a fundraising team, which actually looks a lot like the go-to-market team at a SaaS company, right? It's like marketing and sales team together. That's kind of what it looks like. We try to serve that whole suite. As we look at the future roadmap, we kind of do a market map of what we think we'll need to have to own the category, right? And so as we look at that market map, I want to find problems I can solve for my existing persona, my existing buyer first, right? I think people get really enamored with expanding TAM, and then they think about selling to somebody they've never talked to before, or in the part of an organization that they've never talked to before. I'm like, don't jump there until you've
exhausted the budget of my existing persona.
Yeah, if there's a person who's already writing you checks, talk to that person first, and sort of expand share of wallet there first, and then the next set of products is selling into those exact same organizations, but to adjacent personas. So maybe in our world, it's jumping from the fundraising person to the volunteer person to the accounting person, but you're selling to personas within the same organization. And then beyond that, you think about adjacent markets. So for us, it would be like the foundation market or corporate social responsibility or international, right? And so, but I have plenty of TAM where I'm at right now. I just want to be able to deliver more value to my existing buyers faster. And if you can do that well, then you have great net revenue retention, great gross retention, less risk in the business.
I love that. Yeah. Solve more problems for your current customer.
Yeah.
I love that.
Gabe, hearing you talk, you're so strategic. You're so thoughtful. You know your metrics so well. Like you can tell that you've told the story a lot. You probably tell it to yourself a lot. I
Yes.
imagine, you wake up thinking about it, go to bed thinking about it. When did that happen? I mean, 5 years ago, were you this clear and understanding of all of these different moving pieces?
No, I've had to learn a lot of this over time, right? Even as something as simple as the fundraising process, if you're coming in from the outside, like there's just a lot to learn. SaaS metrics, there's just a lot to learn. And so I'm I'm curious generally, like one of my few superpowers I think is I'll just read a lot of stuff, right? And so a lot of it's just spending my commute in listening to the SaaSer podcast or just consuming as much as I can to get up to speed and not assuming that there's a part of my business that I really don't have to know about. Like I can't outsource the fundraising bits. I can't outsource go-to-market metrics. Like as a founder, I'm responsible to understand those. Now I want to hire somebody smarter than me. It's better than I am, but it's my responsibility to know those things. And so a lot of it's just like learning and reading over time. The one thing with SaaS metrics specifically that is advice I underappreciated is for a long time, I didn't want to hire a VP of finance. Like I didn't want to hire a finance person
How come?
because I thought they're not accretive. Like they're not making something or selling something. And so why do I need people that are just sucking salary that aren't making something or selling something, right? After I hired that person, I'm like, I have no idea how I lived without that person. And I see a lot of founders make that mistake where that is one of the most accretive positions that
Totally
you can
agree.
hire for, and people hire for it way too late. And that hire, like Chris, who's my guy right now, like incredibly good at SaaS metrics, right? And so that sharpens me a lot. Like I was pretty good before, but now I feel like, man, I'm getting really good because I've hired this person who's really smart, focused on it, who's educating me every week, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, this is like this operational finance role. It's like driving a car really fast at night without headlights on.
Yes.
And when you get a good operational finance person, it's like the headlights go on, you
Yes.
know? And that's I think that's a really powerful lever. When do you think the right time to hire that person is? I'll give my thoughts, but I 100% agree we hire that too late as founders. In a B2B SaaS context, when is the right person? I know that's probably a little bit contextual, but you have a thought on that? When is the right time to hire that person?
You know, if you have a finance background, you're great at spreadsheets, you can delay it a little bit, but I even feel like by $2 to $3 million in ARR, you can start thinking about that position.
Yeah, I was going to say in the 1 to 2 range. That's
Yeah.
what I was going to say.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to founders in the earlier stage, maybe years 2 through 5, who are listening to this thinking, gosh, I don't know a fraction of what Gabe knows yet, and it's so overwhelming?
Yeah, I think find really good mentors. Some of the big problems I made in my previous 2 businesses where I just didn't have very smart people around me, so I didn't know the thing. Like, my first breakfast meeting with Greg, I was just stoked that somebody who'd done it before would take a breakfast with me, right? And so a lot of it was just meeting with people and learning as much as you can and being a good listener. In the early days as a founder, you're trying to prove yourself to everybody. And so a lot of times when you get a good meeting or you meet somebody, like you're so bent on pitching and making yourself look like a big deal that you don't stop to listen and learn. And so I think in the early days, yeah, find people smarter than you and just listen as much as you can. And know that you're going to fail a lot of times. Like all the things that I know now, half of them I know because I screwed them up at some point, and that's okay too, right? Just, deal with adversity, move on, endure, and eventually you're going to learn all the lessons and know the things.
There's so many good founder attributes you've mentioned in this podcast. You've talked about resilience and endurance, but you also talked about curiosity. And I think I think Allie's question about what advice would you give a founder here? I think you have to be curious. It's hard to learn if you're not curious about something,
Yes.
And so you've done a really good job of that. I think being curious about the math of your business, curious about what your customers need and want, and letting that kind of make your business and your products better over time.
Yeah. I think something that's adjacent to that that's really important is you're curious about stuff that you're excited about and problems you want to fix, right? And I've seen founders that just look for what's the business I want to start, and they look at the broad swath of all businesses that could be started, and they just make a random choice in a random vertical to start that business. And it might that particular area might have a huge need and a problem that needs to be solved. It's just like you don't have any background in that industry that would give you permission to solve that problem, and you're not going to be very curious about it. You just don't care, right?
Yes.
I was really passionate about this stuff before I started Virtuous. I'd worked in nonprofits. I'd done work for nonprofits, and I was super passionate about generosity. So, on my nights and weekends, instead of scrolling through Twitter, this is the kind of stuff I'm going to be reading or listening to anyway. Like, I care about it. And I think that gives you a little bit of an unfair advantage if you can really sink your teeth into something you care about.
Well, I agree. But even with, you made an interesting point. I've seen this in myself too. But even with that domain expertise in nonprofits and that connection to customers, there were still things that you thought were going to be true
I didn't know.
that ended up not being true.
That's right.
So that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Gabe, I'm curious, why are you so passionate about giving?
Yeah. There's two things, and I kind of alluded to this before, but one is when we give our time, talent, money, social capital, it creates amazing impact in the world. Like in the early days of Virtuous, one of our features had allowed this woman who's a fundraiser for an organization that prevents sex trafficking, literally rescues kids out of brothels in Southeast Asia. And because of that feature, they were able to raise an extra $10,000 and go in and do a couple of more rescues and get kids out of the situation, right? Amazing impact. So that generosity is creating crazy impact in the world. But I just saw that even internally in my own heart and the heart of my friends, when they stopped thinking about themselves and were generous to their friends, family, when they gave money away to people outside of them, they were just happier. Like they were less bent in on themselves. They were less selfish. They were more fun to be around. Like generosity is this amazing antidote to so much of the selfishness in the world. And so,
Preach.
yeah. So anyway, that's sort of the impetus. And being able to do this in vertical SaaS with this kind of software is like sort of a means to an end for me, if that makes sense, with the idea of the bigger vision is I want to increase global generosity.
So you probably get to hear quite often stories like that from your customers.
Yes.
Does that lift your team? Like, do you share those widely? And I have to imagine that just changes the culture dramatically.
Yeah, it does. I mean, most of my team are working at Virtuous because they have it's dual purpose, right? Because anybody that gets to do what they're really good at a cool tech company and make a decent salary and they get to have impact in the world and meaning, that's a pretty special thing, right? So we share stories about the impact of our customers. We invite our customers to events. We encourage our team to get around our customers. We ask that all employees of Virtuous volunteer at a nonprofit for at least 2 hours a month on work time. And so and it's sort of a little bit of a cheat code, right? Because if your employees like to be around your customers, it actually makes you better as a company. It's what every vertical SaaS company wants anyway. I want my whole team to understand my customer's problem, but most of our team really wants to dig in and understand the customer's problem, which is great.
I love that.
You're obsessed with metrics. Do you know how much more donations Virtuous has enabled for nonprofits?
Yeah, right now, well, we were doing better until the latest macroeconomic conditions. And so
there's been a slowdown in giving, you're saying?
It's been, adjusted for inflation last year, giving was down about 10.5%. And so even if our customers were down net 0% adjusted for inflation, it's a 10% win over the rest of the space. But we're well over $250 million that we've generated in net new generosity that our customers wouldn't have otherwise got.
So your category is generosity.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think that's a good segue to talk about the category creation efforts here. I mean, I shout out to Anthony Kanata, Arizona guy, starting or founder of Audience Plus, but from a category creation standpoint, author of a book called Category Creation that was really influential on me, and I know influential on you too. Tell us about the category creation efforts. what category you're creating and why it matters to Virtuous.
Yeah, absolutely. Category creation has become a little bit of a buzzword in our space. Sometimes I'm a little bit hesitant to use it because in some ways we're not sort of creating a brand new category in the world. I think
You didn't invent CRM.
We didn't
right?
invent CRM, but in some ways we're completely redefining what that category looks like and what it should mean. And so, yeah, like Anthony's book, Category Creation, was an amazing influence. The book Played Bigger
Yep.
Sure.
was just a great. So if you want to read about this and get into it, but it's basically the idea that you can reframe how the market thinks about solving a particular problem. And so if you've been around software, great examples of that is Gainsight created customer success.
Incredible.
The idea that we don't just support our customers, we want them to be successful, and we build teams and solutions around that. And then Gainsight can then sell into that idea of they're the customer success platform. HubSpot did it with inbound marketing. Like HubSpot it's an amazing company and product, but it doesn't do anything unique. All the parts of HubSpot existed in the world before HubSpot, but they just created this idea that your customers should come to you. You should educate them. It's called inbound marketing, and then they sold into that category. So at Virtuous, we've created the category responsive fundraising. And so we have a conference around it. We wrote a book around it that did really well. And we have like these category lightning strikes that educate the market on what responsive fundraising is. And the idea of responsive fundraising is you don't have to like have spray and pray impersonal marketing to your donors anymore. That people give more sacrificially when they feel known, when there's a personal connection. And you can now use technology to build personal connections with your donors at scale. And when you do, you see generosity go up.
Yeah, it's been fun to see the company build a movement around responsive fundraising. It's been fun to see and certainly accretive to the company. I think we're getting toward the end here. I have a few closing questions, unless you have anything else you want to ask, Gabe.
I have a closing question.
Okay, go.
We were both at U of A around the same time. I don't know if we met at U of A, big school. Where were you when the Wildcats won the '97 championship?
Oh my gosh, that's a fantastic question. And so none of our other listeners will appreciate this like you do, but I was an RA in Coronado for 2 years. And so I was like right on campus, right in the thick of it. Like I had even tutored some folks on the basketball team. So like I was all in U of A. I have 2 kids at U of A right now and another one going there next year. So we're Wildcats in our house.
Awesome.
But when we won, I was in the middle of Speedway in a massive like mob riot, screaming my head off and going crazy.
Okay.
So this was one of I was going to ask a related question. If I came over to your house for dinner wearing a Sun Devil shirt, would you let me in? It'd be a problem.
Yeah.
Friendship over. You wouldn't let me in.
It'd be a problem.
Okay.
I'm on Team Gabe for this.
Okay,
one.
I like it. I like it. A couple of standard closing questions here. I'm always interested in what people are grateful for. I think there's a lot to learn from gratitude. So we'll start with that one. What's something in your life or a couple things in your life that you feel gratitude for?
You know, I mean, my family, like wife and kiddos, are huge ones. But I was talking about this recently. People were asking me, like, why I'm willing to do like crazy things that people shouldn't be doing. I do it in sort of in my personal life too, I try big endurance stuff that I have no business doing. I've started a few businesses that I really had no business starting, right, in some ways. But I had 2 parents who like never like really created a ceiling. For some weird reason, they just always like made us believe that we could do anything in the world we wanted to do. And I've never believed anything different, right? And so I think and it doesn't have to be parents, but it can be teachers and people around you that just see a way higher ceiling for you than you see for yourself. And that's been huge.
That really resonates. The impact our parents have on us or we have on our children with respect to the way we see ourselves and our limitations or the lack of limitations. I had parents that were similar. I don't remember having the impression I couldn't do something.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big unlock in
Yes.
the world when you think about it. This isn't one of the questions, but I realized I forgot to ask you. You commented on endurance. Do you have a big race coming up or you have a 100-miler coming up somewhere?
I'm thinking about signing up for one. A couple of months ago, I had a pretty massive fail where I tried to run 50K from Lake Pleasant to Crown King, Arizona, and I got about 22 miles into it and completely fell apart. I had to have some 4-wheel drive truck pick me up off the mountain and
You
take me.
bonked.
I bonked.
I didn't know that. I didn't
Yeah.
hear this story.
Yeah.
Which
When
race
was this?
that?
It's the Crown King 50K.
That's
And
the one in March.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Bad nutrition? What happened?
Well, my heart started, so I think it was bad nutrition, bad sodium that caused my heart to start going crazy. And I've had like some heart issues in the past. And so I'm like,
Time to stop.
it's funny. My
Don't mess
joke was
around.
I thought about my wife and kids first and then my board second of like, all of these people are going to be so mad if I die up here. And so I bailed on it. So, but the cardiologist just told me, you're fine. Go out and sign up for something else. So now I have to find my next thing to sign up
Okay.
for.
Oh, wow. I love that. Okay. And I love that your investors rank just below your wife and your kids. That's really, really amazing. All right. Last question here.
That's actually horrible.
That was I was giving sarcasm, by the way. I was giving sarcasm. I was speaking as an investor, by the way. I
Yes,
thought
I
it
know,
was
yes.
funny. I think it's not the right question to ask where the best tacos are in Arizona, because there's amazing tacos everywhere.
Yeah.
But what's one place you like to go for tacos? I mean, the best tacos in the country are in Arizona.
Yeah.
Where do you like to go for tacos?
Yeah, this may not be a popular answer because my top two choices right now are both Texas-based places,
What?
but it's
What?
Torchy's and Rusty. Like,
Ah.
I know, and there's great Arizona tacos, great Mexican food, but I could eat Torchy's or Rusty taco.
I do like Torchy's and Rusty. I forgot that Rusty was from Texas. I've been to Rusty a couple times.
Torchy's is better in Texas.
I agree with that.
That is true. For sure, that's true. But, oh gosh.
I'm going to make
They
you
have a
answer
taco
this
called the
question.
Democrat. That's so good.
Called the what?
The Democrat.
Okay.
Is that I know, yeah.
Yeah.
What's on it?
That one is like the pickle one. Well, the Republicans, the pickle one. The Democrat is like pork and this amazing kind of white sauce with like a feta cheese kind of thing.
Getting hungry.
So good.
I like it. Hey, Gabe, thanks so much for spending time with us, and congrats on the incredible company you're building. We didn't talk about much about kind of where the company's going from here. I can say as a board member and as an investor, this is a company that I think has a public company profile potential. It's on an incredible growth trajectory. It's one of the most successful software companies in Arizona. So congrats to you and the team for just the incredible company you've built and all you're doing to also advance generosity in the world. I love that.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me on. It's been a ton of fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabe.
The Phoenix Founders Podcast is sponsored by Arizona Venture Development Corp.,